All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. So I've got some great evidence here today. Again, it's further confirmation on top of all the other evidence that I've presented already for 2024 end days. I always forget to get the book. It's right here, one sec. So this is just, further icing on the cake. It's backing up further and confirming further the 7 pillars of scriptural proof for the 2024 end days, according to the biblical prophecy. So this is related, heavily related. I mean, I do kind of cover this in the book and in my videos already, but perspectives are important, and this perspective here is important to recognize because it's a nice narrow perspective where you're just focusing on the concept of the heavenly marriage feast with Jesus, okay, and the verses that talk about it. And from that perspective, you could say the marriage feast verse perspective, if you want to classify it. From that one simple, narrow perspective, you could see great, even you could say, even standalone quality proof for the year. Okay, so here we go. Now, to start off, you need the understanding that you get from Psalm 90, the famous verse where it says a day is like 1,000 years. But like I pointed out, nobody else seems to notice, is that in that same one sentence, it says that the 1,000 years is a watch. So everybody's used to calling it's a day, but it's also called a watch. Okay, so a watch is 1,000 years. Now, this is related to at least one or two of the chapters in my book here where it talks about the Jesus coming on the third watch. It's linked to one of the chapters in there where I get into the parable from Gethsemane, which is another discovery that I made. But I've got videos and chapters talking about that, so I won't get into that. Like I said, this is a singular and narrow perspective focusing on the marriage feasts, but it does heavily tie into all that other stuff. So watch is 1,000 years. We know from those other sources, like I briefly mentioned, that Jesus will be coming after 2,000 years, after 2 watches, and he's coming on the third watch, which is at the start of the third 1,000th year. And that third 1,000th year corresponds to the last day of the week. So Jesus comes and ushers in the 1,000-year millennial Sabbath. Okay, that's what everybody understands. Okay, so if we go and I'll build up to the great reveal. That way it'll be more fun. I was going to do it the other way around, but there's not that many verses to read, only about 5 or 6. So in Matthew 22, verse 1, and Jesus answering again spake to them in similes, saying, the reign of the heavens was likened to a man, a king, who made marriage feast for his son, and he sent forth his servants to call those having been called to the marriage feast, and they were not willing to come. Then in verse 8, then he said to his servants, the marriage feast indeed is ready, and those called, this is in the simile, it's in the parable, remember. He's not saying at this time the marriage feast is ready, right? But in this parable, the marriage feast indeed is ready, and those called were not worthy. Be going then onto the crossways, and as many as ye may find, call ye to the marriage feast. This is in reference to after, Israel rejected Jesus. Well, not everyone in Israel, but, Israel, generally speaking, rejected Jesus. Israel then fell a few decades later. Okay. After that downfall, not extinction, but after that downfall, okay, the need was to go and get others. That represents the Gentiles and anybody else who believes and comes to God, right? So then in Matthew 25, verse 10, and while I'm just building a foundation here by reading all the relevant marriage feast verses that are about the heavenly marriage feast, right? And it's obviously, but we know that Jesus is the groom, okay, and that he's gone up to the heavens to attend in this marriage, heavenly marriage ceremony, which is just figurative. It's not literal, okay? So to speak, he's not actually marrying anybody, right? It's symbolism. But every Christian's aware of these things, right? So I'm just laying down the foundation here, right? So in the first verses I read, Matthew 22, 1 and in 22, 8, just a quick example about how the marriage feast is referred to as being up in the heavens, okay? And the whole point of Jesus was to help go out there and gather people to be ready for the marriage feast. He got rejected by his own people. So then he took the offer out to all the rest of the world, the Gentiles, to bring them into the fold as well with the believers of Israel. Okay, so slaying the foundation. Then Matthew 25:10, and while they are going away to buy, this is the famous parable. It's very large. This is just one verse from it. And while they are going away to buy, this is in reference to, I think it's the 10 virgins, right? Which represents the 10 Christian assemblies, 10 arbitrary Christian assemblies who weren't ready when Jesus arrived. Okay. Some were ready, but some weren't, right? So while they are going away to buy, that means they have to go away to buy oil for the lamps because Jesus arrived. And in this parable, they weren't ready. So they were lacking something. They had to go out and get the oil, which is the Holy Spirit, because they weren't prepared with the Holy Spirit for when Jesus comes. That's the lesson of the parable. Anyway, so while they are going away to buy, the bridegroom, Jesus, came, and those ready, keyword, went in with him to the marriage feasts, and the door was shut. And afterwards, come also to the rest of the virgins, saying, Sir, sir, open to us. And he answering said, Verily I say to you, I have not known you. So in this famous verse from the famous parable, we can again see the foundation being laid, that there's this heavenly marriage ceremony that's taking place. Okay, Jesus is the groom. Okay, and we're being invited to the marriage ceremony. Okay, that represents us going up into the heavens to be with God and Jesus and our loved ones in the paradise like afterworld, right? So that's what us going to the feast represents, right? So next, last one before I read the reveal verse. Then in Revelation 19:7, it says, May we rejoice and exult. Revelation 19:7. So this towards the end of everything, Revelation, towards the end of the chapters. And we rejoice and exult and give the glory to him, because come did the marriage of the Lamb, and his wife did make herself ready. And the wife, if I'm not mistaken offhand, is the heavenly Jerusalem. But neither case, right? Because come did the marriage of the Lamb, and his wife did make herself ready. And there was given to her that she may be arrayed with fine linen, pure and shining, for the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saints. And he saith to me, Right happy are they who to the supper of the marriage of the Lamb have been called. And he saith to me, These are the true words of God. So those are the foundation verses. What they show us, like I already said, is there's a heavenly marriage ceremony taking place up in the heavens that we are going to be invited to. Jesus is the groom, and he has invited us to his wedding ceremony. It's got to do with him, being inaugurated up in the heavens if he hasn't already been. That's what it's got to do with. But what it's got to do with us is we're being invited up to the marriage ceremony. That is symbolically us being accepted at judgment. We passed at judgment, and we're being taken up to our blessed abode afterwards, right? The heavens, the paradise, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that's what these verses show, and they show that, from these 4 or 5 verses, we can see that is the scenario. We know that when Jesus died, 3 days later, he resurrected, he was with everybody for a little bit, then he went up. So Jesus has been up there doing whatever activities pertain to all this for these 2,000 years. Okay, and he told us in those 4 or 5 verses that I tried to look it up, but I don't think anybody can find out the specific things that are going on up there and the order. That's too complicated. I don't even think there's enough information in the text to discern any of that. But nonetheless, we generally know what's happening up there, right? And it's just figurative anyways. It's not really marrying anybody up there, right? So we're going to we are invited up there. It's just whether we are worthy enough to be accepted up there. That's what comes down to life and earning your worthiness and all that. But the most important thing is Luke 12:36. So I laid the foundation there. We know the background. We know what's happening here. But in Luke 12:36, it says, and be like to men. It says and ye like, but that's the implied meaning. And ye like to men waiting for their Lord. So it's in reference to waiting for the return of Jesus, when he shall return out of the wedding feasts. Okay, so like I said, Jesus died, he resurrected, eventually soon went up to the heavens, take part in these heavenly activities of inauguration and whatnot. Okay, and we know that Jesus is due to return. Right? It points out here, when he shall return out of the wedding feasts. So the important thing here to logically point out is this is pinning down wedding feast, the timing of the wedding feast, showing how it's pertinent and relevant to the return of Jesus, right? They're not two unrelated things, right? So, and be like to men waiting for their Lord, when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he having come and knocked, we all know the symbolism of Jesus knocking, are we ready, right? That he having come and knocked, immediately they may open to him. And I also want to mention too, when Jesus gave that famous parable, which I've made videos about, where he said, when you see the fig tree put out new leaves, new shoots, new growth, that means I am nigh at the doors. And that was his part of his answer to the disciples when they asked him, how can we know when you're coming back? Or how do we know when you're here? So that was part of his answer, right? When you see the fig tree, which biblically represents Israel in this exact biblical context. So it's when Israel is reborn, he is imminent and nigh, waiting at the doors, at the door which he will come knocking on. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that, right? So having come and knocked, immediately they may open to him. Now, if you don't know, I mean, nobody will know the day or the hour, or even probably even the week or the month. But I've always argued that we can know the year because the 7 Bible prophecies pinpoint the year for us, right? And confirm it all from all different angles. So if we can know the year, we can at least be somewhat ready, waiting, and watching, right? So you're going to have 2 categories of people, just like those 4 or 5 verses show. You're going to have Christians who are ready and Christians who are not ready. The Christians who are ready, and I'm not saying they're ready simply because they know roughly when Jesus is coming back. It's that plus the fact that they're righteous and deserving of passing in judgment because they've done the right thing theologically. That is also a mandatory component. Don't get me wrong, right? So not just because you're waiting and you know when he's going to turn up, right? You have to be worthy as well. So anyways, so if Jesus is coming and he's going to knock and he expects you to he would hope that you immediately let him in. And if you don't immediately let him in, you're one of those Christians who gets turned away because you're not ready. You have to go away to get your Holy Spirit, your oil, and you're going to try to come back to Jesus and go knocking. He's going to say, nope, too late. And there's other verses in similar fashion, right? When I shut the door, those verses, nobody can come in after that. Everybody knows those verses, right? But I'm keeping things strict to the wedding feast concepts here, right? So again, be like to men waiting for their Lord. So that's an instruction to be waiting for him, just like Daniel 12, where it says, blessed is he who waiteth earnestly, or earnestly wait, and does come to the days 1335, which is the 1335th year, which is 2024, as explained in all my material, right? So be like to men waiting for their Lord. That's an instruction to wait for his arrival, just like from Daniel 12, when God told us when the arrival would be and instructed us to wait for it and count it and know it, right? So, and be like to men waiting for their Lord when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he having come and knocked, immediately they may open to him. So that's a threefold that's threefold here. We have 3 time-based things here which pinpoint the logic showing that God wants us to actually know when this is going to come. Okay, so an instruction to wait for him. Okay, and then again, wait for when is he going to come? When he shall return. So you're not just waiting aimlessly, but you're waiting for when he shall return so that you can immediately respond to him. Okay, that's what I mean by threefold. When you put that in combination with Daniel 12 and it's obvious that God wants us to know when, especially since he told us the year that it would happen and told us to count it and how to calculate it. He definitely wants us to know when it's going to happen, but he's told us we won't know the day or hour, but we will know and should know the year, right? So anyways, I mean, how else are you going to immediately open to him? You know what I mean? Unless you're a real righteous person, it doesn't matter if you have any clue when Jesus is coming back. I mean, I fully believe that if you're righteous and deserving, it doesn't matter if you know when Jesus is coming back or not. You don't have to know when Jesus is coming back. You're not going to go to hell or fail a judgment because you didn't know when Jesus is coming back. It's just important to know when Jesus is coming back, because if you're not ready for it, if you're not worthy for it, then you better get things in order soon before it's too late, right? So anyways, the whole point of this is be like the man waiting for the Lord when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he having come and knocked, immediately they may open to him. Well, Jesus has been there waiting and ready since 1948 with the rebirth of Israel. He told us when Israel's reborn, I'm at the door waiting. So he's at the door waiting already. It's less than 2 hours to God and Jesus. A day is like 1,000 years. So they've been up there 75 years waiting. And then one day there's going to be a knock, whether it's literal, whether the world's going to hear it or not, who knows? Probably not a physical knock we're going to hear, But when he does knock, meaning he's at the door ready to open that door and come in, he is hoping that there's going to be a flock of people there expecting him, waiting for him, and immediately ready to open to him, right? So he says, happy those servants whom the Lord, having come, shall find watching. Verily, I say to you that he will gird himself and will cause them to recline, and having come near, will minister to them. And if he may come in the second watch, which is in the second 1,000 years, and in the third watch he may come and may find it so, happy are those servants. So that's the great reveal verse. Now, what did it reveal? Well, like I talk about in my chapters and videos on the correlated prophecies, such as the parable from Gethsemane, right? Jesus talks about in the parable from Gethsemane that he will return at a third watch. And it's the last one that he mentions. We know the prophecy of Hosea, another thing linked here that I talk about in the book and in my videos. Hosea's prophecy, very famously believed by Christians and Judaism, says that on the third day we will be healed. After 2 days, on the third day we will be healed. Okay, so after 2,000 years, we will be healed. There will be the resurrection, the translation, the rapture, going up to paradise. Even the earth will go into its Sabbath rest mode for 1,000 years. Even the earth will be healed. So after 2,000 years, we will be healed. Jesus connects Hosea's prophecy of 1,000-year days to 1,000-year watches as per Psalm 90 as well. Both are triangulating back to Psalm 90. So in the parable of Gethsemane, Jesus relays that there's going to be 2 watches, and then he arrives on the third and the final watch. That triangulates over to this year, Luke 12, where it says, if he may come in the second watch, and in the third watch he may come, and may find it so, happy are those servants. We know Jesus isn't going to come back after 1,000 years during that second millennia. That would be between 1000 AD and the year 2000. We know Jesus didn't come back then. Nobody was expecting him to come back then, right? That's why it says, and in the third watch, if he may come and may find it so, happy are those servants. This is the bold hint being put in there. The third watch, he may come, Luke 12. Gethsemane parable, the third watch is the final one that Jesus returns on, okay? Third watch, a watch is 1,000 years, Psalm 90. 1,000 years is a day unto God. Hosea's prophecy, after 2 days, on the third we will be healed. So clearly, anybody could see the triangulation here. So Luke 12 is obviously showing us that Jesus returns on the third watch. And it's safely assumed by everybody, even Judaism assumes in the Hosea prophecy and applicably to all these, that it means at the start of the third, because that would fit with the divine week of 7,000 years. Okay? So there you go. This verse, triangulated, is definitely talking about, was blatantly talking about when Jesus returns. I mean, that's blatantly verbatim stated, but it also reveals when he's going to return, which is after 2,000 years, after 2 days, after 2 watches. Okay? Now, how does this tie back to the wedding feast? Well, in Luke 12 is where it says, when he shall return out of the wedding feast. When he shall return. Be like the men waiting for their Lord when he shall return out of the wedding feast. So what's it tell us? Looking back at the foundation verses I started with, we know that after Jesus died and resurrected and went up to the heavens, he's doing all his fancy heavenly inauguration type stuff. Whatever it is in particular, doesn't really matter at this point here to us, right? No disrespect, but you know what I mean? It's not talked about, right? We can only speculate, but he's doing all that stuff up there for a period of time. How long is that time? 2,000 years. And then after the 2,000 years, he's going to return from out of the wedding feast. And he's going to say, hey, knock, knock, knock. Are you guys ready? Come join me at the wedding feast. So that's how all these wedding feast verses tie in together, 100% relevant to when, in the timing of when Jesus returns. He will be returning at the end of the 2,000-year period. Okay? That 2,000-year period stems from his baptism when he was anointed as and appointed as the Messiah. Well, you could argue he was appointed as the Messiah, but that's when he was official. He was anointed. That's when God came down. Boom, end of argument. Okay? And at that point there, which was 23 AD, 2,000 years forward, 2023. So at the end of 2023, 2024 is the time, I don't want to use the word time twice, but it's like the fields of time are ripe. It's the right time for it to occur. Okay? Again, as I show in the book, so many things are interrelated. The 6,000 years of mortal man, the Bible plots it all out year for year. It's all there in my first chapter. From the birth of Seth, who was the firstborn mortal, until the end of 2023 is 6,000 years. As I also talk about in the book and I've explained in my videos, we have to allow for a year flux with any of these dates because nobody knows the day, week, or month that God is taking a measure from. We just know the rough year. We just know the year. You could have an event taking place in January or December. It's 12 months apart, which is a year apart, but they still take place in the same calendar year. So you have to allow for up to 12 months, 1 year of flux. So 6,000 years, the prophecy of Daniel, all the other prophecies in here point to the end of 2023, which will be the end of that period of the 6,000 years. 2024 is the end. So obviously it didn't happen at the start of 2024, but we have to allow for those 12 months of flux. It's only been half of that now, so we still have half a year left to go. So nobody can say that this is all wrong, it's failed, and this and that there until the end of 2024. But even as I detail in the book here, there are valid reasons why we should still stay ready, waiting, and watching, at least for a few more years, as I detail in here. That's a separate video for another time. I would say 3 or 4 more years, and it's going to hurt for me to wait that much extra, stretch it out even more. But with all I know, with all the evidence I've found, I am not giving up hope if nothing happens in 2024. A part of me feels like nothing will happen in 2024. But I'm not going to be caught by surprise if God suddenly does it in 2025. You follow me? The point in all of this is, in everything I've been teaching for 7 years, is not about fussing and fighting about, especially about day, hour, this and that. It's not critically important when he's coming. It's just the fact that he's coming blinking well soon. Okay? He's not coming 50. I mean, if God came down and said, hey, I'm coming in 50 years, let's say 20 years, more people might still be alive by then, you would still be panicked and in a rush to change yourself and get yourself ready, right? The point is according to the evidence, we're in the final year or at most couple few years at best. It's extremely important to get the message out there to prepare. I'm not trying to brainwash and convince everybody that it's going to happen this year. I'm not God, but based on what he told us, it should happen this year. But don't give up faith if it doesn't this year. Very, very important. Don't be caught by surprise. God might say, well, hey, what happens if it, 2024 ends? Nothing happens. People are mocking me, which will probably happen. Good for them. What if a couple weeks, maybe just a couple days, maybe a couple months into 2025, and all of a sudden, bam, end of days? Who's going to be laughing then, right? So, and pointing fingers then. There are credible reasons why it could stretch a little bit further out, but because these 7 biblical prophecies all point meticulously to 2023, 2024, it would be ignorant for me or anybody to disregard that evidence. So we have to go with it until it plays out. And if it doesn't play out, we have a few options left. Okay? So anyways, but like I've always said, even though there's few options which are based on, I won't get into it because it's too complicated, but at the end of the day, 1948, the rebirth of Israel, that only occurred in 1948. Which is exactly 1,260 years from 688, when the Dome of the Rock was built on the Temple Mount. You can't alter 1948. People could argue, oh, well, 688 was the first year the dome started getting built. It took 3 years to build. Why not take it 3 years later? Oh, well, the only problem with that is Israel was born in 1948, not 1951. Okay? So 1948 is a pretty fixed thing. You can't alter that one. You could alter the other end of that, but you can't because it's fixed, because 1948 happened, right? So that's why I feel pretty strong that it's got to happen this year. And the Bible warns there'll be peace and surety and then sudden destruction. So, don't be fooled thinking, oh, well, it just feels like normal life. That's not how it's supposed to be. It will be like that, and that's what it said it would be like. Be like the day Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed. So everybody has to be on their wits, pay attention, right? If you don't have it already, my book's only $11.11. Okay, I urge you to go get it. If for whatever reason you don't want to or can't afford $11.11, I got all my video teachings on my channel. Most of the material, if not all of it's in there on my videos. Okay, it's just a lot easier because I went through the effort of compiling it neatly in here for everybody. You go watch the videos and you'll be there for days or weeks watching everything. So, but anyways, take care, folks. God bless you all. But don't forget that I warned everybody about this. Don't forget that I warned. Okay, and don't give up if nothing happens in 2024. Keep that hope up at least for a few more years, and then we could reevaluate the situation. You know what I mean? Then we can reevaluate the situation. But anyways, take care, folks. God bless. See you all later.